Please forgive the poor production values. Our crack reporter has had a fall in the apartment and is resting comfortably, as they say. I feel obliged to reply to Steve Schmidt, whom I admire, about Rudolph Giuliani. He's sort of giving the traditional media line here of what the hell happened to Rudy Giuliani and goes back to that old saw, America's mayor. Let it be understood that Rudolph Giuliani never was that person. That was created by the media. And the media, more than ever, has a commercial interest in creating news and drumming up business and looking for a story. And it does not serve the public good. When I was living in New York at the time of Giuliani's mayoralty, I despised him. First of all, he was despised by some people for these perp walks that, got him a lot of attention, showed him as a tough guy, but actually he was humiliating people. I don't have a problem with a perp walk in general, but his motive was to gain traction and headlines. So he would have these, he would tip the media to an arrest in a financial house, and it would show him as being a tough guy and treating financial malefactors the same as he would any other criminal. It's fine as far as it goes, except there was something crass about it and unnecessary. Be that as it may, let's not quibble. There used to be a place in New York City called City Hall, and it was a lovely, gracious building with a park in it, and people used to have packed sandwiches and have their lunch on a sunny day, including people who worked for the mayor's office and other people who just were crossing the park on their way to work or coming out of the subway down at the Brooklyn Bridge and were going into wherever they were going, the financial district or Tribeca or wherever it is they were headed. Rudolph Giuliani, in his megalomania, in order to increase his own sense of importance, had City Hall unnecessarily changed with high gates and high security in which the public was not permitted access to the park anymore or the grounds. And this was way before 9/11. And it was simply that he wanted it to look like the White House. And in fact, in a childish kind of way, it did look like the White House. There were bright white, I don't know the architectural terms, but these small towers with gates and a wall, and it had very much that feel of the entrance of the White House. You can look up pictures of how the City Hall now is. It was not like that before he came, and it was unnecessary. Let us also remember that when he ran for mayor, he used racist tropes. He was running against David Dinkins, who was a elegant, traditional Manhattan politician. I think he had been president of the Manhattan borough. And Giuliani got all of his votes from the outlying white enclaves in New York and Staten Island and in Queens. And there was a occasion when the mayor was speaking. There was a protest by police officers, and they were shouting using the N-word. They were shouting the word viciously, and it was picked up by microphones. So there was a racist element to Giuliani's campaign to win the mayoralty against David Dinkins. And David Dinkins was a tennis-playing, debonair kind of a fellow who, did not come across at all as a, culturally distinctive person, which is to say he was just a New Yorker whose skin happened to be dark. And it was ugly. So it was ugly. The mayoralty, the City Hall business looked sort of fascist. They made a big deal about the fact that his father had been a criminal and he was a, crime fighter, an avenger. and that it was psychologically interesting. He was a disagreeable person who was suspected of fascist tendencies. When 9/11 happened, the media, as usual, the corporate media being irresponsible, you know, created or allowed to be created this myth of Giuliani being competent because he walked around in the streets with dust on his shoulders. But they completely ignored the real story. The real story, like, why was the emergency control center across the street from the World Trade Center? His police advisors and security advisors all wanted it in Brooklyn. He insisted that it be across the street from the World Trade Center. They said that would be a likely target as it had been in 93. Let's have it in Brooklyn. Well, what happened? The attack came in 2011 and the emergency control center was knocked out because it was right across the street, and because of rubble and eventually the fall of building number 7, the control center was not used on that day. Or what about the supposedly heroic firefighters who died, who we thought were rushing up the building knowing they were running to their deaths? They didn't know anything. There had been a general evacuation order given, and they didn't get it because their walkie-talkies weren't working, just as their walkie-talkies weren't working in 93. So Giuliani did not take steps to make sure that the firefighters had state-of-the-art radio equipment. So when the crisis came, they did not get proper transmissions and a general evacuation. Get out of the building. Do not go up the stairs. Get out. The building's going to go. That's why the firefighters died. Not just because they were heroic, although they were. Many of them died because they simply didn't get the evacuation orders. So this America's Mayor business in the first place was entirely invented. It was cut from whole cloth by the media in search of a hero. And this America's Mayor myth started. Whereas people who were progressives or just people who were skeptical or people who were just realistic were saying, yes, but he blew it. He blew it with the emergency control center. He blew it with the walkie-talkies. And he didn't do anything on 9/11 except walk around and just put up a good front, which was fine, but that's something that any mayor ought to be able to do. So please, let's dispense with America's mayor and what happened to Rudy Giuliani. Let's put what happened to Rudy Giuliani in the same drawer we put my thoughts and prayers after a mass killing. More of these cliches that do us no good.